Hi again. I'm super excited to have y'all in this space to do a workshop. We're going to do just a little bit of what I do in my recovery storytelling workshop, which is an 8-hour small group virtual experience where you get to work on a story of your own and learn a little bit about the type of storytelling you heard me do. I love to disrupt systems, so I'm going to disrupt you all. And I'm going to ask you to get up and move to seats. I know you have a lot of stuff. You can bring your stuff or not bring your stuff. That's up to you. But try to go and sit with people that you don't know. And try and sit in tables of 4 or 6 people. I know, you're very comfortable. But please, go find people you don't know to sit with. Sit at some tables in groups of 4 or 6. We're going to do a little bit of work. So I'm going to make you a little bit uncomfortable. And that's where all the good stuff happens. Can you put that PowerPoint up, Daniel, please? Oh, that's the old one. I feel a little bit like I'm herding cats, and that's okay. Meow. Meow. I love whoever is hissing and meowing right now. You are my people. Yes. Okay, well you want to be at a table with people though. Bring people with you. You're herding cats too. Okay, so I know this is going to be like there's a little bit of chaos that's going to go on in here, and I just ask you and encourage you to try to stay focused on what I'm asking you to do so that you can get the benefits of what we're about to do. Because I promise you will be impacted by what we're going to do. Good, bad, or otherwise, hopefully good if I do my job well. So again, I have been profoundly and deeply changed by the storytelling work that I've done. And I've been really fortunate to help hundreds and hundreds of other people get to do that. And so I want to give you a little piece of that today, of what it's like to kind of connect with others, to be good listeners, to be changed by the person that you're hearing from, and to be a storyteller who's changed by your own story, and hopefully you have an impact on the person that you're with. So what we're going to start with is, I'm asking you to get comfortable, so I'm asking you to get a little bit brave. So we're just going to have a couple of community agreements in here. Allow the storyteller their space. That means that you don't interrupt, you don't do anything except for lean in and listen. So give them that space and time to tell the truth about themselves to you. All stories are sacred and all stories are true. I don't care what you think about the story you're hearing, it's true. It's as true as I know how to tell it in this moment, so it is sacred and it is true. We never question that. Even if you don't agree with what's going on in the story, it's not your story, right? Which brings me to tell your own story only, right? We don't tell other people's stories. We already heard earlier, we heard enough about that. So I only tell my own story, and I expect that you're only going to tell your own story. And when you leave here, if you heard a story that really touched you or impacted you, go and tell someone about your experience of that story. Don't tell that story and who told it. But you can say, somebody came up to me during lunch and said, oh my gosh, I have a very similar experience as you with being incarcerated, pregnant, on methadone. And it really touched me. That's the kind of thing you can share and say, oh my gosh, I heard this story, it really touched me. I felt so connected to that person, or I shared a similar experience, without saying, oh my God, you should have heard Meghann Perry today. She was a mess. She was incarcerated, she was right? That's telling my story. I don't want you to do that, but you can say, I heard this really powerful story and this is how it touched me. And just use safer language, right? I call it the grit and the grace. We talk about the grit. We're all about the grit. I tell the grit. I told you I stole OxyContin from my dad while he was dying of cancer. And I don't remember saying goodbye to him. That's the grit. But what I don't need to tell you is like what I packed in the pipe or like I don't need to tell you what it tasted like or smelled like or any of that, right? Because we don't need to know that crap. We just know I went home and got high. So we talk about the real stuff, but we don't need to use all the details that might be hard for someone else to hear. So that goes for violence, self-harm, right? Any kind of abuse, substances, specific about substances, suicidality, anything like that. You can talk about it, but you don't need to go in. So we want to stay safe in here. So what you're going to do, the first thing, you're just going to spend a few minutes at your tables. You'll have 8 minutes at your table to share a little bit with your table mates where you learn to tell stories about your own journey. Whether that's as a family member, whether it's mental health challenges, whether it's problematic substance use. But where did you learn how to talk about it? In what space did you learn how to talk about it? So try to share the time. I will do whatever I have to bring you back, because those conversations are usually really rich and it really gets crazy. But I will start acting weird and making funny noises and stuff when it's time to stop. So 8 minutes, take turns, share the time, share the space, and talk about where you learned to talk about the challenges that you've faced. Okay? Go. Well, you're going to share at your tables. In the same manner, what kind of like culture do you think your storytelling is? What cultures might your storytelling reflect? Where are you telling from? Right, so I identified some of mine, some of the negative ones, like a victim or a badass, right? Also 12-step, church. So, they're not all bad, but share at your tables a little bit what your ideas, what came to mind for you when I talked about storytelling cultures, and what might you be carrying or what kind of message might you be passing on with the way that you share stories. Might be good. You might be reflecting on, maybe there's some stuff in there, maybe some stigma or something else. So share at your tables about your culture of storytelling. Go ahead. Now that I have you warmed up a little, you're connecting, you're talking with people, we're gonna get a little more gnarly. Are you with me? All right, so you are going to do some storytelling in pairs. Ah! I ask you to listen to be changed. Look for the part of you that you don't know yet in the person that you're paired up with. Listen to be changed. Listen to find yourself in the other. So I'm really going to disrupt you now. And let this not be like the high school cafeteria or let's say middle school cafeteria where like people are left out. I want you to find a partner, someone you do not know. So I'm going to do all the disruptive stuff and then I'm going to give you all the instructions. So please find somebody you don't know to partner with, and I hope everybody ends up in a pair. Go forth. Find a partner. They might be sitting next to you. You might have to move around. All right, so we are going to do storytelling in pairs. You are going to share a story with your partner. Your partner is going to share a story with you. We're going to do this multiple times. Trust the process. Believe in the magic. Uh-oh. Whenever you hear trust the process, you're like, God damn it. This is going to be bad, isn't it? So, in your pair, once we're there. You're going to just quickly introduce yourself if you don't know each other. I am going to time it. So each person is going to have 3 minutes to tell a story. So we're not telling the story, right? Because it's hard enough to do that in 15 minutes. We're telling a story, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. But, so you're going to have 3 minutes, and then I'm going to say, stop! And it's going to be the other person's turn. You might be in the middle of your story. And with all respect, you still have to stop. Because the other person gets to have their time. So this is an exercise in respecting being both teller and listener. And you'll get a chance to tell the story again in a minute. So if you don't get to the end, it's okay. You will, in one of the, as we do it more, you'll get used to this 3-minute thing. So it's really important to stop when I say stop. Listener, just say thank you. And then it's the other person's turn. So I'll be like directing you for each of these time frames so y'all start and end at the same time, which is the hardest part of this. Please try to follow the thing so we don't get into chaos. But so it's important to switch promptly. You're just listening, right? You're just listening as a listener. No interruptions. You're just giving the person that space. I can't tell you what an incredible gift that is. Do that with every single person you meet. Just listen to them. Give them the space. Do it with your kids. Game changing. Game changing. When I started applying recovery coaching to my parenting, oh my God. What a difference to really listen to her and ask her questions and treat her like a resource. She was a teenager. She was 14 when I took Recovery Coach Academy, and it was like, it changed everything. By the way, that baby that I almost had, while incarcerated, I got out, I did drug court. We've been through a wicked, wicked lot, but she's 21, and she's amazing. And she's okay. And quick stigma busting story, I was in this stigma workshop, it was really good, but she had this friend who was like, yeah, we have all these crackheads around here in our neighborhood, and blah, 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 and she lives in a tough neighborhood in the city. And he goes, you got crackheads in your neighborhood? And she goes, yeah, when my mom comes over. Burn! I was like, that's my girl right there. And the other guy was like, that's stigma busting stuff. Anyways, so yes, the act of listening is a really powerful, powerful tool. When the storyteller is done, just a single affirmation. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I'm really touched by that. We know how to do that. And we talk about stories, never storytellers. So it's never like, oh my God, that happened to you? Then what did you do? I can't believe it. Right? So it's not about this. We're just talking about stories here. That story was amazing. I related so much to that story. The way that you shared that really touched me. Okay, so that's how we give really good, positive affirmation. Okay. Whoa, Daniel's hot on the clicker. The clicker, that was what we say in Boston. I did not introduce myself at all at the beginning. Hi, I'm from Boston. I have a business. We do recovery coach training and storytelling and theater work and stuff. But so the clicker has not been working, but Daniel's on it. Okay, so I want you to look at these prompts, and I'm going to sort of talk through them really quickly, and just let your mind kind of go a little bit, right? We don't have to tell like the recovery story. We don't even have to tell anything about recovery or mental health challenges or substance use. It's whatever these bring up for you. You're just going to pick one story. There's 2 prompts in case one of them doesn't speak to you. But try to think of a story, think of an event that you want to just share about here, that you would tell a very little story about in here. So the first prompt is a time that you felt out of place. Think of a time in your life when you felt that you did not belong. In 4th grade, my best friend started the Hate Meghann Club. No joke. The Hate Meghann Club, and my entire 4th grade class joined it. It was devastating as a 10-year-old. That was a time that I felt like I didn't belong. So you can think of a time in your life where you were just a fish out of water. You felt out of place. Maybe it was the first time you went into any kind of like a recovery place and you were like, these people are different from me. I can't live like this. I don't have what they have. So a time that you felt out of place. Or you can talk about a time when you gained something unexpected. Totally out of the blue, you got something. A gift, an opportunity. Something just came out of nowhere. It was the last thing that you expected. I was definitely headed to prison 5 years. And I stood in front of the judge and I begged. I had no chances left. I've been bailed, right? For felony trafficking, cocaine. And on bail, I got busted again for the same exact crime. Felony trafficking of cocaine. They let me go to a treatment program. I messed up. I got sent back to jail. And then here I am in front of the judge begging him, please, if I go to prison, I know I'm going to die when I get out. And he had no reason whatsoever to give me another chance. But he did. And he sent me that Christian rehab, which was a big part of the healing that I needed. Totally unexpected. I begged because I had no other alternative. So you can think of a time that you were just given something that was out of nowhere that you never thought could happen. It doesn't have to be all dramatic, like the Hate Meghann Club or averting a 5-year prison sentence. It could be something very small, but if it's meaningful to you, I feel my stories that need to be told right up in here. They're talking to me and they want me to tell. So think of something that you want to share. You'll have 3 minutes to share that with your partner, and then your partner will have 3 minutes to share their story that came up for them. So I'm going to give you a moment to just say hello and decide who's going first. So do that. Time is up. So it's time to switch. It is time to switch. Again, you'll get to finish your story. But right now, it's time to switch. Everyone? Okay. Time is up. 3 minutes goes fast. So you are going to do the same exact thing again with the same person. Only this time, you're going to tell your story with compassion. You might think you had some compassion, and you maybe did. Go hard. Right, really find the compassion for the person that you are in the story and anyone else who's in the story. Because you might have like a hero-villain thing going on. Right? I think I was probably the villain in a lot of stories, other people's stories. But it's not that simple. So go and see if you can dig a little deeper into the compassion, whether it's for you, whatever you think you need to do, whether it's for you or another person in your story. So same exact exercise. So first person, you're going to go first again. You're going to have 3 minutes. Same story with compassion. And begin. Okay, we're going to do this one more time. Trust the process one more time. This time you're going to have 2 minutes each. And you're going to share the most important thing in the story with your partner. So you're talking about your own story. You've told it twice. Each time we tell it, we get to discover something a little bit new in there. And each time we tell it, we get closer to the heart. We stop circling, we get all these bunny trails and all this other stuff going on. But as we tell the story over and over, we start to get closer and closer to what the real heart of the story, when I was talking about that emotional truth, the emotional center, that's what moves people. It took me 6 years of telling the story about being pregnant in jail to find the heart of the story. And the heart of the story, the most important thing in the story that you heard me tell at the end, is how bad I wanted to be a good mom. That's the most important thing in that story. It took me 6 years to really get that gnarly and get that close to the truth. So it's worth doing. So I encourage you, you'll have 2 minutes each to really think for a minute and find the emotional heart of the story that you shared. What is the most important thing to you in what you shared? So you'll have 2 minutes each. First person, you can begin. All right. So we are done with the storytelling portion. Woo! So congratulate yourselves on doing something uncomfortable. I'm going to jump up here, I think. So, I know for some of you, you really got out of your comfort zone, and I appreciate that, and I thank you for that. So that's a little taste of the way that storytelling can be a really powerful connector. How many of you feel connected to somebody new or more deeply connected to somebody that you already know? Yeah. It's pretty magical. How many of you discovered something new about the story that you were telling? Like, did the story grow for you, or did you find something different about that experience than you knew before?
If anybody wants to share, we have mics.
Yeah, so we have mics. So we're going to start where you get to talk, because I could talk all day. So I'd love to hear from a few people what it was like to listen to your partner's story. Does anybody want to share about what it was like to listen to your partner's story? We got one right over here. I don't know that person's name. Off she goes.
That's Heather.
Heather, thank you. So we'll do that one, and then I see you over here at the. I see you.
I had the opportunity to meet Hody, coming from a very different culture, different age, and but with the story in which family was important. We found that in common, and also the importance of connections within the family, within the society, and the life, the journey to find our own worth, and acknowledging the other person worth and our interdependence, how important it is, our connections. I think recovery is connections, and it has been a tremendous part of my life, and I just got to enjoy that with a person I met just less than an hour ago. Thank you, Hody.
Beautiful, thank you. So you found what I hear you saying is that you found sort of a human connection, right? That crosses any of the barriers, and that is what really good, powerful storytelling, heartfelt storytelling can do. Thank you. We have someone over here that had their hand up. Be brave.
So what I got from listening to my partner is that human connection. I got to see how incredibly powerful being vulnerable is and looks and feels. Well, I don't want to tell his story, but the takeaway was, the importance of making other people feel like they matter. And one of the biggest things in my story was always wanting to feel like I mattered, and it was just really, it was amazing. And so it was a really great opportunity.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that. That feeling like we matter, right? Being in a place where we feel like we matter. I was like the gum on the bottom of your shoe from a very young age, and I learned in my household that I didn't matter. I wasn't nearly as important as, the other people in my family. My feelings didn't matter. Who I am doesn't matter. I always felt like I had to be something different than who I actually was. So to share and a parent feel seen and feel heard and feel valued enough that somebody's going to sit and listen to me and really deeply listen. So thank you. And vulnerability, right? It's a superpower. You get just a little bit vulnerable. It's an incredible way to connect. Who else? I saw a hand way back here. Oh, we got one right up here. Okay, yep, and then we'll go back there. You, yes.
Oh, okay. Hello, I'm Lisa. So grateful to be here and be a part of this workshop. So I just made a new friend, and we not only share the same last name, Walker, but as she was telling me her story, there was like these things that were already connecting and I could relate to, and normally I could tell if I wasn't practicing listening, I would have totally connected with her on the wrong things. And so getting to the heart of the matter and the feelings that were underneath, because I was only supposed to listen, and it's just such a damn good reminder. So, and I made a new friend.
Awesome,
Yeah.
thank you. And I made friends with Lisa at lunch because she invited me to sit at her table because I was doing that thing like, I don't know where to sit. I don't know if anybody wants me to sit at their table. I'm really awkward. I'm just going to keep walking around like I think I know where I'm going, but I don't actually have anywhere to go. And she was like, hi. We grew up one town over from each other in a little tiny suburb of Boston. Situate, Marshfield. I mean, you can't get smaller. There's like 17,000 people in the town I grew up in, and she grew up in the right next town. Beautiful, because, right, start sharing, we connect. So I love that you found a way to connect. You connected with things that were on a deeper level, right, rather than separating. We're connecting. Awesome. Down here in the back.
So getting to listen to Sonia, one, getting uncomfortable going to a table where you don't know somebody, but listening to her share so authentically and being so vulnerable, it touched me. It touched my heart in a way that it was empowering to share things that I'm like, been in therapy for a million years, it seems, and yet the communication, because she was so authentic and vulnerable and shared, that it inspired me to, it changed a dialogue for myself on how I wanted to share back to her. I wanted to give her back what she trusted me with.
Ooh, I love that. So what I'm hearing from that, what's resonating for me is that like her courage gave you courage, right? Her willingness to step into the arena, as Brene Brown says, gave you the strength to step into the arena. It's beautiful. This is shifting the culture, y'all. This is the shift. It's open heart listening. And then having the courage to share from that same place. And building bridges and connecting with one another. It seems like such a small thing. It's not. It's a revolution. And I would have said the F word, but I'm trying to behave. It's the forking revolution. It's loving each other in a revolutionary way. What else? What did you discover about storytelling? What did you discover about listening? What did you discover in your own story? Go ahead.
Well, and I was listening to my partner's story. We really didn't have much in our life journeys that was similar. What we did have in common was resilience through difficulty and surviving trauma. And we also found common ground with our negative self-talk over our parenting issues.
Nice, excellent, yeah. Who else, like, anyone else have, like, parent insecurity?
I had
Sorry.
Yeah. Who's that? Who are we hearing?
probably all of us in here, and that's a good segue.
Go ahead.
I actually had a question
Yeah.
that between the stories that she and I shared, she stepped outside, but with the first time you tell the story, and then you said the second time tell it with compassion. And I was wondering, first of all, if you can expand on that. Compassion for whom? And I think I know the answer. And also, once we, after that, went outside for a smoke break and got to talking more, realized that parenting issues is a big thing of it. And I said maybe she meant compassion for our parents, if they were doing the best they can.
Ooh.
Or, I don't know, I'm not sure if that's what you meant by it, but that I just wanted to maybe hear more about how you meant tell the same story with compassion.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I did not have compassion for myself for most of my life. I had the negative self-talk. I was no good. I was weird, right? People didn't like me. And then I started to get, I had serious mental health problems in middle school and into high school, and then, substances came as a way to deal with that, right? And then I started to do, bad things. And I couldn't, perform. I couldn't conform. I couldn't be what my mom insisted that I be. God bless her. She did the best she could. Let's talk about the parents, right? Compassion for her, understanding where she came from. And so I spent my whole life thinking that I'm a piece of shit. And I told my stories like I was a piece of shit. Right? We don't realize how powerful our internal messages are in coming out in our stories. So we're talking about internal stigma, like the great workshop I went to with Owen, talking about internal stigma. And we don't even realize that we have. And that comes across in our stories. So when I, talk about I had to go back along the side of the road, right, and pick up the cigarette butt and the lost shoe, and these were me. And I had to show compassion for those pieces of trash, because that's what I thought I was. So for me, it was an act of, I had to be very deliberate in stepping into compassion for self, so that when I tell my stories, you can love me because I love me. Right? Because if I'm coming from a place of shame, it's very easy for you to assign more shame to me. If I tell you my story without shame, it's much harder for you to put that on me. So when we find compassion for ourselves, and we tell our stories from a place of compassion for ourselves, we bring more compassion from others. And that's what we need, right? The recovery movement, we tell each other stories. We're in this echo chamber, y'all. We just tell each other stories. We're just talking to each other all the time, right? And then we get asked to, tell it on the TV or something like that. And we're just like, okay, let me tell it the same exact way as I tell it to my people. And then I always say, people, I have this, crazy story. I'm not alone in that. A lot of us have really crazy stories. I have a really crazy story. And people are like, you should write a book. That would make a great movie. I'm like, so you can, voyeuristically watch all the worst things that happen to me. And, so people are, fascinated by the suffering. and the craziness of my story, but they don't identify with me. That's what happened to her, but I'm not like that. That's different. So when I tell a story with compassion and love and from a human place and from an emotional truth, then it's not a bad movie anymore. It's something that you share with me. So when we go out of these rooms and we go and we tell our stories other places, we tell about feeling lost, feeling like we don't belong, feeling hopeless or powerless, right? But in a specific way, in a way that makes it, we always say in theater, the specific is universal, the same in storytelling. So the more specific I tell you, the more you can grab onto that. Me standing in the middle of that big jail pod, thinking, I just want to be a good mom. I just want to be a good mom. This isn't how it was supposed to be. It's so specific that it's universal. And then we find compassion for others in the story as well. Right? And then they become fully rounded characters, and we can have some compassion for them and love them. My mom's not a villain, although I made her out to be one a lot. Right? The men, like all the partners that I've had. I like everybody, by the way. I know I said I was queer. I'm an equal opportunity admirer. So there is a trail of hostages of all genders behind me, but they were always the villain, right? But they're not any different than me. I'm the villain in their story, right? One more comment or question. Go ahead.
One comment on compassion. I shared a story that I've shared probably dozens of times, and I thought I had a good ending to it. And then you said, share it with compassion. And it's a story about somebody else sharing their story with me, which was kind of the catalyst of my first attempt at sobriety. But I still looked at it very selfishly, that was my first catalyst at sobriety. But today I learned that when I stepped out of the truck and looked at this poor woman on the sidewalk that needed a ride that I wasn't going to give a ride to, I felt compassion for her. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel so sorry for you. And it was so out of character for me any day and addict me like 5 times over. I'd never do that. But realizing that human connection, when I share my story, all of a sudden that story has all kinds of meaning because there was a human connection there that I've never made, and I don't know, did it feel different the second time? Yeah, I think it really did.
Beautiful. Thank you. She is you. She is you. Everyone who's still out there struggling, they are us. They're not different. They're not separate. They're not them. They are us. And in early recovery, we've got to separate ourselves. That makes sense, right? We've got to get out of that and belong to a new herd, a new tribe or whatever. But once we get our feet under ourselves, then we can go back and say, you are me. You are me. And I love you. I love people who use drugs. I love people who use drugs. They are me. So real quick, Daniel, will you put the slide one more? So if this has been something that intrigues you, it's not for everybody, but I invite you, if you want to learn more about the storytelling and more about how to tell the kinds of stories you heard me tell today, we do a virtual workshop. It's online. I'll leave some business cards up here. Not a sales pitch, but an invitation, because for if this resonated for you and this feels like something you want to step into, it's online, so it's easy to do. Please go out and be the revolution. Tell your stories differently, share from the heart, get gnarly, get in there, and tell real, heartfelt stories. Tell from your scars, not your wounds. Change the culture. You have the power to change the culture. Please join the revolution, because we need some help, y'all. People are still dying, and they don't have to. We can change that. So thank you all.